Welcome to Royal Daily Report, your trusted source for breaking royal investigations. Your daddy's little girl, like you were the youngest. What do you feel your parents were expecting you to become? Like all parents, they want their children to be happy. Are you happy? I am happy in the sense that I have many things to be grateful for, but I have a wish for myself, just to be able to achieve something. The story you're about to hear is not gentle in any way. For years, the world believed the story was finished. The names were known, the trials were done, the headlines moved on. But silence doesn't always mean the truth has disappeared. Sometimes it only means it's being held back, waiting for the moment when protection expires. From inside a prison cell, Ghislaine Maxwell no longer has alliances to protect, reputations to preserve, or futures to negotiate. According to source claims, she has begun speaking, not loudly, not publicly, but deliberately. And among the names now being whispered again is one that many assumed was untouchable. Meghan Markle, not as a royal, not as a duchess, but as a figure from an earlier chapter. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report now. Don't miss any explosive revelations. A time before titles, before cameras, before fairy tales. A time when access mattered more than fame, and when photographs were taken without anyone realizing how dangerous they would become years later. Unseen images are resurfacing. Associations long dismissed are being re-examined. And what was once quietly erased is now re-entering the record. This is not a story about gossip. It is a story about what could not stay hidden. Every scandal has a moment when control is lost, not with an announcement, but with exposure. According to multiple source claims, a collection of photographs once quietly suppressed has re-emerged into public view. These images are described as problematic, not because of how they look at first glance, but because of who appears in them, where they were taken, and who else is known to have been present at the time. For years, these images were allegedly scrubbed, deleted from archives, removed from circulation, made impossible to license, and yet they're back. The reason, sources suggest, is simple. There were too many people involved, too many overlapping connections, too many witnesses to keep aligned forever. At some point, maintaining silence becomes more dangerous than letting the record surface. What makes these images so unsettling is not just their existence, it's the effort that went into making sure they disappeared. Institutions do not erase material unless it carries risk. Media archives do not quietly lock away content unless someone, somewhere, has decided it's better not to see it. And now, that decision has unraveled. Stay with Royal Daily Report. We bring you the stories others won't tell. The photographs place Meghan Markle inside a social environment long associated with Jeffrey Epstein, an environment defined not by one location, but by a network of elite gatherings, private travel, and protected access. This is the moment the story begins to shift from rumor to record. At first glance, a photograph is just a photograph, a face, a room, a moment in time, but context changes everything. According to source claims, these images are considered damaging because they confirm presence, not coincidence, not hearsay, but physical proximity within a known social circle. They anchor a timeline. They connect people who were previously separated by plausible deniability. And more importantly, they explain the silence. When images vanish, it's rarely about embarrassment. It's about liability. It's about what those images might invite others to remember, confirm, or finally say out loud. Sources allege that efforts were made to downplay, distract, or redirect attention whenever these materials surfaced. The strategy wasn't confrontation, it was exhaustion. Let the public grow tired, let the questions fade, let the images remain unseen long enough to become irrelevant. But time has a way of changing leverage. When protection fades, when alliances fracture, when those once invested in silence no longer benefit from it, the truth doesn't need to be proven again. It only needs to be shown. That is why these images matter, not because they accuse, but because they place. And placement is the foundation of every serious inquiry. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Daily Report for exclusive investigations. To understand how this could happen, you have to understand obscurity. Before Meghan Markle became a global name, she was something far more useful: anonymous. According to source claims, during the years in question, she moved through elite social spaces without scrutiny, precisely because no one was watching. She wasn't famous enough to attract attention, powerful enough to be questioned, or important enough to be tracked. And that anonymity was an advantage. At private events, lifestyle openings, and invitation-only gatherings, names aren't remembered, faces aren't flagged. No one asks how they arrived, who invited them, or who paid for the travel. Sources allege that during this period, Meghan Markle was present at gatherings where proximity mattered more than status, where introductions happened quietly, and access was granted informally. In those rooms, being nobody was protection. It explains why her presence went largely undocumented at the time, why images weren't labeled, why names weren't attached. Only later, after marriage, after elevation, after global attention, did the past begin to look dangerous, because obscurity shields you until the moment it doesn't. And once the crown appears, every unseen step before it becomes part of the record, whether anyone wanted it there or not. If anonymity was the shield, then access required a corridor.
One of the most consistent gateways into elite social circles during this period was Soho House, a private members club designed to look casual, creative, and harmless, while quietly connecting powerful people behind closed doors. Royal Daily Report, bringing you the truth behind closed doors. In 2015, Meghan Markle is said to have been flown to Istanbul for the opening of a Soho House location. At the time, she was not a household name. She was not a headliner. She was described as a social filler, someone present to populate rooms, attend events, and maintain atmosphere. But these gatherings weren't random. Soho House openings were magnets for financiers, royalty-adjacent figures, Hollywood power brokers, and individuals who valued discretion above publicity. Invitations were currency. Presence implied access. What raised quiet questions later, sources allege, was the scale of travel. International flights, premium seating, a level of mobility that appeared inconsistent with her acting income at the time. According to claims, even colleagues from her television work privately questioned how such travel was being funded. No answers were offered publicly. None were required then, because in that corridor, no one asks how you arrived, only whether you belong. To understand the concern surrounding the resurfaced images, it's necessary to understand what sources describe as the Epstein environment. This was not a single house, island, or city. It was a social ecosystem. According to source claims, Meghan Markle was repeatedly present in New York during periods when Prince Andrew was also in the city, times when Jeffrey Epstein's social calendar was active and well attended by a consistent circle of figures. The significance here is not a single meeting, it is repetition. Being in the same environment once can be coincidence. Being present across multiple overlaps suggests familiarity, comfort, acceptance. Subscribe now to Royal Daily Report. We expose what others hide. Sources allege that during this time, she moved easily within rooms where introductions were informal and discretion was expected. These were not spaces governed by sign-in sheets or press coverage. They were governed by silence. This is why proximity matters, not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it establishes who had the opportunity to see, hear, and know. And in environments later exposed as abusive, opportunity becomes a serious factor. The resurfacing of images matters because they confirm that proximity was not theoretical, it was physical. At this point, the story widens, not to distract, but to clarify. According to newly revisited source claims, Meghan Markle's alleged trajectory is not unique. Other women across Europe followed strikingly similar paths: early modeling or party circuits, proximity to elite social figures, and eventual marriage into royalty. Two cases are frequently cited: Sophia of Sweden, whose past associations, sources allege, link back to Epstein-connected social environments as early as 2005. She later married into royalty, at which point those early years faded quietly from public conversation. And Mette Marit of Norway, who publicly apologized in 2019 for having maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, citing poor judgment. Her past included controversial relationships
and associations that were downplayed once she entered royal life. The importance of these cases is not moral judgment, it is pattern recognition. According to source claims, Epstein did not operate chaotically. He moved people strategically. He placed individuals into environments where upward mobility was possible and where past could be quietly absorbed by institutions once status was achieved. Royal Daily Report, your window into hidden royal histories. In this light, the resurfaced images are no longer isolated. They become part of a broader framework, one where anonymity, access, and advancement intersect. And once that pattern becomes visible, it becomes impossible to unsee. By the time the story reaches this point, the timeline becomes impossible to ignore. According to source claims, February 2016 stands out for one reason. It appears in two very different narratives that are not supposed to intersect. On one hand, this is the period when Meghan Markle later stated she first met Prince Harry. On the other, sources allege this same window aligns with what were known as yacht weeks, private invitation-only excursions involving wealthy patrons, models, and social companions. These events were not cruises in the traditional sense. They were floating social spaces designed for privacy, discretion, and selective access. Phones were discouraged, press was absent, names rarely appeared in records. Sources claim Meghan Markle participated in one such yacht week during this exact period. The significance here is not accusation, it is overlap. When two origin stories share the same window, one public, one private, questions naturally arise. Not because anyone insists on an answer, but because timelines do not bend easily once established. And in stories involving power, timing is often the loudest detail of all. Until now, the story has lived in social space. Here, it enters legal territory. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report now and hit the bell icon. Never miss an investigation. According to court-related source claims, Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent accusers in the Jeffrey Epstein case, intended to call Meghan Markle as a potential witness in her civil case involving Prince Andrew. This was not a symbolic gesture. Three reasons were cited. First, Meghan Markle resided in the United States, making jurisdiction possible. Second, she was described as having been a close associate of Prince Andrew for a period of time. And third, most critically, she was said to have been present within Jeffrey Epstein's social environment. In legal terms, presence matters, not because it assigns guilt, but because it establishes who may have seen, heard, or understood what was happening behind closed doors. Witnesses are not accused, they are positioned. Ultimately, she was not called to testify, but the fact that her name entered that legal consideration at all changed the nature of the conversation. At that moment, the story shifted from social curiosity to judicial relevance. Silence can last years, it rarely lasts forever. According to source claims, as legal consequences solidified and prison doors closed, Ghislaine Maxwell began to speak more openly, not in press conferences, but in statements that suggested cooperation, exposure, and resentment toward those who walked free. Her alleged claims reached back into Hollywood, modeling circuits, and elite social placement, including references to Meghan Markle's past associations. At the same time, something else began to happen quietly. Image archives changed, photographs vanished, licensing restrictions appeared without explanation. Royal Daily Report, uncovering what they tried to erase.
Getty Images, according to claims, removed or limited access to certain photographs involving Meghan Markle, images that were previously available. No public reason was given. To observers, it appeared as if institutions were attempting to erase visual records before they could be re-examined under a new lens. But erasure itself draws attention, because when systems move to hide material rather than address it, they confirm one thing: the material still matters. And by this point, too many people knew what had existed to pretend it never did. For years, the story remained intact because it was curated. Images were scrubbed, names were detached, timelines were simplified. What couldn't be denied was buried under what couldn't be proven, until the moment protection faded. What this story reveals is not a single scandal, but a process, a method by which obscurity becomes access, access becomes elevation, and elevation attempts to rewrite the past. But records do not forget. Photographs wait, witnesses remember, and silence only works until someone decides it no longer serves them. The resurfacing of these images does not close the story, it reopens it, not with shouting, not with spectacle, but with something far more dangerous to powerful systems: context. Because once context returns, the narrative can no longer be controlled, and what was once invisible becomes unavoidable. This is not the end. It is the moment the record stopped being editable. This was Royal Daily Report, where hidden histories resurface. Subscribe now and stay informed on every revelation that changes the royal narrative. Stay connected with Royal Daily Report, where the truth refuses to stay buried.